Welcome to One on One. I am your host, Jimmy Olsen, and today I get the opportunity, the pleasure. I mean, I almost want to say I'm not worthy for the interview that I get to have today. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Patrick Albanese. I mean, what can I say about you, Patrick? I mean, you've pretty much done almost everything.
Not necessarily, but to
I said almost.
To the few listeners that actually do know who you're talking about, they're saying, I'm okay, you're not worthy, fine, but do it anyway. I am flattered.
Yeah, well, I mean, you really you've done a lot of stage things. Of course, one of the big stage performances that you are really known for is your reoccurring role in Triple Espresso, which I know both of us are headquartered base, we could say, in central Iowa, and that's kind of what brought you here. Yeah. Then you just didn't leave for whatever that reason was. Besides finding a wife and starting a family. But besides that,
Besides that, I did go back to get my stuff. Yes.
That's right.
I did go back. I went back to LA to get my stuff.
Well, so, before we get into too much meat of this, what have you been, I just kind of find out, what have you been doing over the past couple months with the whole lockdown?
I got to tell you, I desperately want the lockdown to end so that I can go back to the easy, carefree life that I used to have, because I have done so much work around the house. It's wearing me out. I don't know how many rooms we've painted now. I just finished doing a hallway, and it starts with, gosh, should we swap out the door handle? And the next thing you know, you say, I'm on the roof of the house. I'm putting in an antenna. I don't even know how that happened. But the hallway started with, paint the frames around the doors. And then it's like, gosh, those doors have to be painted now. And once you did that, you said, oh my goodness. Now I've got to paint the walls. Oh, those lighting units. Those are those old 1985-ish globe lamps. They just look terrible with the new paint. You really should update the switches. And next thing you know, I've got a pile of hardwood flooring now sitting in the living room. All because I decided to paint a frame. And we did the basement started the same way. Next thing you know, I built 4 shelving units. I was like, I thought we were just going to paint a wall. We were just going to paint a wall. And so I've been mostly working around the house.
And the funny part about
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying that the funny part about that is that's pretty much what I'm hearing from everyone. I mean, even all of a sudden they're working from home and they're going, I didn't notice that little, there's like the paint's off color over there. I need to start redoing things,
Yes.
But as you were saying, being an actor, this probably isn't one of the fortes you ever thought about doing.
Well, now this'll blow your mind.
Okay.
I'm actually quite good at it. I used to have a business building magic props for magicians. I've actually always been kind of a do-it-yourself guy. I grew up in a family with 8 kids. We didn't have much in the way of money. I was into magic, and so if I wanted a magic trick, I had to build it.
Oh, wow.
So at a very young age, I started learning. I started accumulating some tools and learning how to build stuff and learning how to paint and learning how to do all kinds of things. And so I've if you go around my house, which still needs a considerable amount of work, by the way. I mean, I have a phrase that probably gets me into more trouble than just about any other phrase, and that is, how hard could it be? So when I decided that, my deck doesn't look very good out back, how hard could it be to spruce that baby up a little bit? Next thing you know, I've ripped out the entire thing, dug 6 holes to put cement posts in, and I learn everything as I go. So I actually am pretty good at these things, and it's also why I'm always cautious about starting a project, because I know that when you start something, there will be the surprises, right, the hidden things. You say, when I pull that wall down, or when I pull that carpet up, I'm going to find something that I don't like. And it will be the thing that says this was going to be a simple project and it has just turned into a nightmare, you know? So take your original budget, take your original estimate of difficulty, your original estimate of time, triple those, and you're probably going to be pretty close to accurate for any home improvement project.
Well, those of us that watch the home improvement shows on, the pick your channel, either DIY or TLC, it always ends up being more than what they expected, or they pull something, especially if it's not a house, it was a pre-built house that someone has remodeled or added to. And then I remember watching one time, they're going, okay, we're going to do something with this wall. They pull the wall down, and only to find out there was supposed to be a support beam here that they cut it in half. And what did they do?
Yes.
Wait a minute.
I have a somewhat simple goal that the next owner of this house, when they decide to do work, they don't walk around saying, "What was that guy thinking?" I'm determined to do things correctly. I was fixing the tub the other day, and after I pulled everything apart, it was, what were they thinking? Was this just stuff they had lying around? Why is there a basketball behind the bathtub? I don't even know what's going on here. What parts did they use to make this tub work? And no wonder why it leaks. It's there's always surprises, but
and of course you've got to be careful because you don't want to ruin your hand model career. So,
Yeah, of course, as I get older, not a lot of call for the older hands. It's funny, even commercial work. I watch the genealogy, I'll have TV commercials that I did 30 plus years ago where I had this unbelievably beautiful black hair, that was all over the place. I looked who was the David Naughton, the Dr. Pepper guy. I drink Dr. Pepper, and I had hair like him. I was Kevin Bacon in Footloose. I had some hair. But I had a period of time, I would say most of my 40s, where I got cast as a doctor a lot. I just had that look, doctor,
Really?
accountant, lawyer. Yeah. And I notice as I get older, the casting calls are for patient.
Really?
So I get a feeling the next incarnation is, they need somebody in a retirement village. I'm like, that's great. I'll be selling. Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. Now I am a patient and I play one on TV. It kind of goes both ways.
Yes. It will go both ways. I played a doctor many times, and that's why it's funny whenever I see TV commercials now with a doctor in them, and I'll say this to my wife. I go, "Fake doctor." And she'll say, "Well, now how do you know for sure that's a fake doctor?" I was like, "They threw a stethoscope around his neck." It's always a fake doctor when there's a stethoscope around his neck. It's like they're trying too hard to say this is you probably can't tell he's a doctor. Put a stethoscope on him. That says doctor. If anything says doctor, stethoscope. But real doctors never wear stethoscopes in commercials. At least that's my theory for now, and I'm sticking with it.
Well, until you get proven wrong. I mean, we all have the observations and the opinions that we have until something happens that says, no, you were kind of wrong. Well, you've been staying busy. So what has all this done? I mean, I know you do a lot of, magic shows or commercials or play. I mean, I'm assuming kind of like everybody else, you have been put to a complete halt for this, but how does the future look? I mean, Are you at least getting some calls of going, okay, we're going to start thinking about what our plan is for the future because things are they're lightening the restrictions and they're looking better. I mean, how is that working out for you so far?
I have a booking in May
of 2020.
That's all. Yeah, no, it's a 2021, but it kind of has weather permitting attached to it. It certainly did stop. Now, and again, I'm trying to be optimistic without being foolish. And I do want to think that things could abruptly change. Mm-hmm. And you never know what's holding things up. for example, I know in a lot of the touring shows, some of the unions are holding it up saying, well, we're afraid to send our union members out on these jobs until we know it's safe. But I also know the nature of people in, say, the entertainment business, and a lot of them are going to say, to heck with my union overlords, I need to get out there and work. And so I think people will start, I don't want to say breaking the rules. They're going to say, is there a way that we could move into a venue, maybe socially distance, test the waters, have people, sit in clumps of family, friends that they're already exposed to, and see if we can make something work, see if people are interested. And I think really that's where the marketplace is going to come in. When are people ready to gather? If you show up with a powerhouse show like a Hamilton, for instance, people are going to say, I'm going. I'm risking COVID. I'm risking, I'm going. They might. I don't know if they're going to do that for a magic show. Well, right. A lot of my magic friends they're trying to do virtual magic shows. And the difficulty is, first you have to sort of find out what works in a virtual magic setting. You start to realize that, some of the stuff that you normally do as a magician does not work well in a virtual setting because it loses some of the impact of being there right on top of the magic. Even though the camera can be watching it, there's sort of something suspicious in the back of your brain that goes, well, I don't know, it might be a trick, a camera trick or something like that.
Right.
So it does lose a bit.
Exactly.
You're not live. And so it loses a bit. I did try for a while doing mime on the radio. That did not last long.
Well, before we get into the whole radio side of that, because that'd be a great conversation for us to have. I'm kind of curious, looking on the entertainment side of things, as you're talking about, and you've been part of the of touring performances over the years. I mean, do you foresee? I mean, again, they're opening things up. It's social distancing. They can only. I mean, even restaurants. You can only have half the normal clientele. I mean, you cannot be fully, packed in. I mean, I went to a restaurant the other day and half of the tables, I mean, some are actually putting like this table's closed, things like that. This one actually had all the tables pulled out of the establishment, which just looked weird. But I mean,
that looks better than the ones that they put the mannequins at the table next to you. I'm not a fan of that. That was creepy looking.
Why do you keep staring at me? I just have this odd feeling. But I mean, we know there's a hard cost because, for bringing the trucks and the buses and how many people you need to set things up. I mean, do you see something that they've got to figure out a more economical way to do these shows to get them on the road, because they know that instead of a sellout being a full house, we'll say, if it's 3,000 people, instead of being able to sell out a house of 3,000 people, they're only allowed to sell 1,500 tickets to be able to social distance well. I mean, is that even feasible? Or, I mean, how would they be able to figure that out?
I would wager that it's not feasible on shows that have a guarantee. So if you have a guarantee at a performing arts center that, the performing arts center has to pay the show $600,000 for the week. I'm just making up numbers for the time being.
Right, exactly.
They could be accurate. Normally in an 8-performance, say, Broadway week, your hard costs as the presenter, as the performing arts center, you go, okay, can I recoup that money? And of course, with a big hit show and a bunch of full houses, yes, you can. But you can very easily get into the loss column because that's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. With a smaller show like my show, Triple Espresso, we still have hard costs. If like when we do it here in Des Moines, 2 of the 3 actors in it live here, so you save a little bit on housing and transportation type stuff. And they've streamlined the set recently where it doesn't take a full crew to move it and get it in place, and you don't need a big truck now. It can be done in a very small truck. So we had actually started streamlining a year ago on that. But even with that, I think one of the things I'll see is a lot of my friends with the one-person shows. I think you're going to see a lot of one-person shows because that's the show that could go into a small room like the Temple Theater here in town, 245 seats or so.
Sure.
And potentially still turn a profit with 80 people, potentially. Sure. You know, depending on the cost of the tickets. It doesn't feel as fun. It's always nice when there's a full room of people laughing or enjoying, but that might test the waters where people are, you know, if you can make a show like that work. But having said that, you know, I mean, you could end up, if you end up with a show with only 40 people showing up, you say, we're losing money left and right. And in a big show, especially if their fear is the spread of a communicable disease, I don't even know how you keep the cast safe because they live on a bus as they, you know, I mean, they get to a hotel, but they get to a town, a lot of them will stay in, you know, hotel and they'll have roommates. Mm-hmm. But when they travel from city to city, they're on a bus together. And the bigger shows will have a couple of these buses with a bunch of people packed into it. I'm not sure, you know, what happens when one cast member gets sick? Do you have to quarantine everybody? How do you work with understudies? You know, you can't, you could say, well, how about we only have people that have already been exposed to the virus and have the antibodies, or, you know, they had it and they're immune to it. But that would be considered a discrimination complaint. So you can't do that. So I'm not sure how it's going to work.
Well, it's not even just piling them in the bus, like you said, when they're traveling from city to city, but every night, I mean, you guys are packed backstage. I mean, it's not like there's just, you know, a few people and you don't see anybody. I mean, you've got the ones that are moving the sets for the next scene. You've got all the actors. You've got them. I mean, you are pretty much, I mean, for those of us in the central Iowa area that you go to the Iowa, it's like the Iowa State Fair backstage. I mean, you are shoulder to shoulder, neck to neck. I mean, you're probably accidentally bumping into somebody all the time because there's just no way there's no way around it.
There's no way around it. And, you know, it's, if you're dealing with other logistics, like for instance, let's say this is something my wife will have to deal with because she takes care of making sure everybody has food. Mm-hmm. Well, is buffet food out? Is it only prepackaged? You know, and that's a much bigger expense, much harder to keep it fresh and hot as opposed to somebody with some sterno pans. Mm-hmm. But these are all things that are in union contracts where you have to supply those meals. And now you say, but my hands are tied. How do I supply food to these people who are working these 12 and 18-hour shifts on some days and keeping them safe? How do I serve it to them? I mean, it will touch every area. So obviously, you know, our best hope is some sort of miracle that this thing just disappears and people say, let's go back to work. And, you know, we're fine. I mean, when you think about it, since the beginning of time, we have managed to get through these pandemics. Some of them have been, you know, horrific, in like the Spanish flu. How many millions did that kill? Mm-hmm. And rather swiftly. But we've, you know, just in the last, 50, 60 years, we've had Hong Kong flu and bird flu, H1N1, SARS, MARS, candy bars. We've had them all.
Right.
And they did a lot of damage. And then I don't think we've developed a vaccine to any of them, nor a cure. But somehow or another, we ended up developing the antibodies or something happened. So I am hopeful that we'll eventually get to that point and we can resume to life. I don't like that phrase new normal. I'm really hopeful for normal.
Right.
You know, I like seeing people's smiling faces. I don't enjoy looking at masks. You know, that's just a personal thing, but I think there are people in that same category with me. It's like, I like to see smiles because so much is communicated when you see somebody smiling and talking, you know, I don't know. That's what I like.
Well, even doing a show, I mean, you want to see the laughter, and if they're sitting in the audience with masks on, you're not able to see that. You're listening to 101. I'm your host, Jimmy Olsen, having a conversation with the Patrick Albanese, actor, all-around fun guy, and you've done many, many things over the years. I mean, we're talking acting, we're talking modeling. you've even dipped into radio, which is kind of where you and I started. Actually, we met one time because we were both trying out for a traffic position at a local television station. And then, of course, over the years, we just kind of kept chatting and bumped into each other here, there, and everywhere. You know, little Dr. Seuss life for us. But in that radio thing, so you've done a little different than me. I mean, for me in radio, I've done more so the music side. You know, you talk for your 10, 15 seconds, you're done, you move on. You've got, you know, a 3, 4, 5-minute song. You've actually dealt more on the talk radio side of things. And I know we've had a conversation about this, and I think it's a great conversation to have, because right now you have them going, hey, you know, we're seeing, because of what we're dealing with, there's, you know, a lot of depression and things like that that people are dealing with. And don't watch the news. If you need the news, get it, move on. Well, let's talk about the person behind the microphone giving it.
What they have to swim through on any given day. You know, and it is pretty tempting to say, oh gosh, I just want the phone string today, so let me grab a hot topic and let's get a little outrage going. That'll be fun. But you certainly realize after a while that you can't maintain that as your day-to-day life, or because it takes you down with it. You know, and I also think, you know, like most people, you say to yourself, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Be willing to admit where you say, you know, I don't know if this is for me, or I don't know if I'm good enough at it. Like, you know, when it comes to the talk radio realm, especially in the solo category, there's giants out there, titans, and they're very good at it. And, you know, I would say to myself, well, am I bringing anything new and unique to the party, or am I just a discount version of these top dogs? And then I started to feel like, I said, you know, I don't know if you're a discount version of these top dogs, but, you know, they're smarter than me. Their analysis is usually quite brilliant. Mine is casual, offhand. And I also realized that I would much prefer to look for, if I could find some humor in something, you know, whatever it is. I mean, even in the midst of COVID or, you know, any kind of craziness, if your brain likes to find humor, it finds it. Sometimes you say, well, you can't tell that joke for 3 years, and then you can tell that joke. But I realized that, and I also realized when it came to the talk part of it that, and as you know, because you know this business better than anybody, there are some, and I'd put you in this category. You're a driver, and I am a great counterpuncher. I mean, I don't want to say great. That's. I am a good counterpuncher. I'm a good person to volley with, but I am sort of a rest pause guy on the radio, where, you know, somebody like you brings up a topic or steers the conversation in a certain way, and then I like to go along with that. And I wasn't as good at driving. I know that it's a skill you can acquire, but you know, just like you could learn to play the guitar, there will always be a Dave Matthews who plays the guitar, and then there will be other people that play Dave Matthews tunes on the guitar,
right?
Not quite as well as Dave Matthews.
It's a conversation they have when you're putting like a morning show together. Like you said, when you're doing talk radio, 9 times out of 10, it's usually a solo person. When you're talking Rush Limbaugh, or you're talking, you know, fill in the blank for that, you know, big talk.
There's a million of them.
They're all like, you know, escaping my mind at this point. But I mean, now when we look at the music side of that, and we're putting together a morning show, you have what they call, which you're using as drivers. That's the anchor. This is the straight person.
Yes.
We are this is the person that sits behind the microphone, make sure the mics are on, make sure we've got a break coming up, we got to go, we got to get out. But then you have, like they would say, the sidekicks or the loose cannons. I mean, this is the funny thing when it comes to radio, and they almost forget about it. Radio is almost to acting on the radio. It's acting, you know, through airwaves rather than behind a camera, because you each have a role to play. This is your role on the show.
Yes.
We need you to, I mean, I remember having conversations going back to radio in the 50s and 60s when they originally started the top 40. And even the radio personality that was doing middays or afternoons, they actually had a role. They're going, okay, I want you to be like this sophisticated, high roller type of person. And then they've got another one is, you're that loose cannon that, you know what, we're not sure what's going to happen next every time. I mean, you have that piece that you had to learn, which no different from you when you're trying to learn a character for a show.
True, and it seemed like, and I'm sure the formula still exists, and you can't argue with the formula. I imagine here you are, you're a program director, and you're saying, okay, I need a morning show. What's working?
Mm-hmm.
Let me look at some of the cities. What are the top morning shows? And you go, golly, there it is. There's the driver, the anchor. You got to have a female voice to balance that out. She's got to laugh at his jokes. And then, we need a bit of a loose cannon, that guy who you go, gosh, if it weren't for this job, he'd be out on the streets for gosh darn sake. Let's get him in here too.
If he didn't have a job, he'd be living in a van down by the river.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, they started, and then you say, we got to throw in a battle of the sexes segment, and we got to throw in this and that. But I also, it's funny, a friend of mine who was afternoon drive on Kiss FM in LA for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sometimes sit in just to watch. And then occasionally he would cover Rick Dees in the morning. If you know the name Rick Dees, he was the Kiss FM morning anchor before Ryan Seacrest was bequeathed the position.
I would say for years.
Yeah, for many, many years. And he was pretty much top dog. And so I got to sit in there once or twice. And I remember when I was starting to do Triple Espresso, and they were like, well, occasionally you have to do some media. And I had been sitting in and doing this, my friend's radio show that he did from his backyard after he left Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm going to tell you a secret. It's not much of a secret, but you should have been able to figure this out. But when you go on the radio, bring content. He said, because these people that have to slug it out for 3 hours a day are hungry for material.
Mm-hmm.
And if you show up as an interview guest wanting it to be all about you, they're going to dispense with you rather quickly and move on to the next thing, because they're not pandering to you. They're not catering to you, excuse me. They're catering to their listener base. He said, so if you show up and you're supposed to be a funny show, you better be funny on their show, because guess what? They're going to want to keep you around for a couple of segments because you're filling some of their time beautifully.
Right.
So, and that was part of our approach when we first got to Des Moines. And I remember some of the guys, one of them, he goes, you sit there and you tell all these jokes, you don't talk about the show that much. I said, I'm trying to provide as much entertainment to these people who have to do 3 hours of material a day. That is not easy work.
Well,
so,
and the comparison from if you're doing talk radio to music radio, I mean, music radio, I always say, this is how, when people say, what do you do? I go, I get paid to say dumb things. That's exactly how I explain it. But then again, I'm talking in 10-second increments. I just have to say something stupid, quirky, or whatever to make you scratch your head, go, oh yeah, this, and then I'm done for 4 minutes. You actually sitting in the talk radio side, you have to have material for 3 hours, for 2 hours. I mean, for constant conversation, and you go on for 7 minutes at a time, roughly, before you go into a commercial break. And then during that break, you have maybe 3 to 5 minutes. And then now you're like, I'm going to a topic. And if that phone doesn't ring, you still have to have something to talk about, because there is no, let's cut to a song.
Right. Yeah. And, although I would never discount the 10-second soundbite, because talk about burning through material rather swiftly.
I cannot disagree with that at all.
Yeah. A friend of mine does, he's on 70s on Channel 7 on Sirius.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he'll cut a week's worth of shows, on a Saturday because it's voice tracked. But, it's like I got, let's see, a 3-hour show, X number of songs, a couple of them run into each other. But when you're dealing with commercial-free radio on top of it, you say, I got a lot of chunks to fill, 10 seconds at a time. And it goes fast. But, and I think, and I'm sure you've experienced this, on the talk side where they say, hey, don't go by the phone. But boy, if you're looking at that phone and nothing's lit up, you're thinking, oh, come on, I'm boring people. This is ridiculous. Or they don't care. So I got to get that phone to ring. But then you get the phone to ring and you say, okay, I must have a hot topic. It can be very addictive, by the way, to look at that and say, this is fun. Look at all these people. I'm obviously very engaging. I must be the most interesting person in the world. Or, you upset some people, or you get the regular, the seminar callers that you go, oh my gosh, it's that guy again. He calls every day. He calls every day.
Right.
And that's one of those, and I'm sure everybody's kind of figured this out. You listen to your favorite talk radio guy, and he's got a substitute in. And that's when everybody starts calling because they say, I can get through today.
Right.
Today's the day I can get through. And what do you end up with? Really bad calls.
Hey, I was just calling to say hey and hear myself on the radio. Could you say hi to my mom?
I agree with everything you said except for most of it.
That's right.
Whatever it was. And I agree. That other caller, him too. So it is a tough thing to manage, and it takes. It's not just a certain temperament. I feel that, like I would go in and feel like I had to so prepare, and I'm sure this gets easier once you've settled into a daily position, and but it would take a period of time. No, but you would say you go. I think I showed up with a stack that's 37 sheets of paper. There's no way I'm going to get to all this.
Right.
But you would still feel
you get to page 36 and you have an hour left.
Right. And you would still feel ill prepared. And then you would say, well, gosh, what happens when I get a guest in here? And then the fun happens is what happens. And, and that was one of the realizations for me is that I've always liked being part of teams anyway. I've always been a fan of comedy duos because I think they're especially rare these days. Mm-hmm. But growing up on Smothers Brothers and Rowan and Martin and Lewis, I just thoroughly loved George Burns, Gracie Allen. Even the husband-wife teams were so fun that. I love that ability to play off of each other. And I thought, gosh, sitting alone in a studio doesn't do that for me as much. But you got to admit, being on the radio is still kind of fun. It's a unique way to get a paycheck.
Again, you are listening to One-on-One. I'm your host, Jimmy Olsen, and I'm chatting with Patrick Albanese. He's an actor. He is a magician. He is a all-around good guy. And Patrick, what do you foresee things that at least your plan over the next, say, 12 months, or kind of like what are you building up for the rest of 2020 going into 2021?
It's a toughie trying to kind of figure out. It's funny. I right when COVID first hit, I started filling the time before things really locked down doing handyman work. Because we talked earlier about, I've been fixing things around my house. Well, coincidentally ran into somebody, you know how that magic stuff happens.
Absolutely.
Saying, do you know anybody that can, go out on jobs and fix things for people? So I started doing a lot of that. Now, it's not my preferred way of getting around. But you say, well, that's if you got the skill, you got a skill. I don't want to turn that into the thing that, next thing you know, it's a handyman service, although I can do my own commercials. But what I'm really hoping for and starting to kind of keep my eye on is maybe we talked earlier about a small show going into a small room that would allow some space for social distancing. And so ideally, I'd like to put something like that together, either just myself or with one other person, and maybe two. Kind of Triple Espresso is a 3-person show. But I think a 2-person show is a little bit more mobile, and but to see if we can maybe put that into some rooms and start to get a feel for how things are going to work in terms of when are people going to start holding events again. I think it's going to be a few months before companies start holding gatherings and saying, hey, we've got entertainment. Here's our annual program where we thank our employees and hand out the awards. But that will come back. So I would like to be poised and ready to be somebody to fill in those places. I emceed a lot and would do magic interludes in between segments for, let's say, a company was doing their annual holiday party or anniversary party, something like that, retirement party. And so you've done a million of those. That they have all this stuff, this bits of business they have to get to that people tend to zone out, and they hope to have somebody there to kind of keep them engaged. So they'll have music segments or funny videos or an entertainer. So I think those might come back first because people in a company that are used to already working together in an environment are going to say, "Look, I'm just going to be in the Sheraton, banquet room with the same people I see every day at work. So if I was exposed to anything, I was with these people 6 months ago."
Right.
But I do look forward to a theater setting. So I'm starting to play with some ideas for something that could be put into a small room here in town that could survive. Nobody's going to get rich, but the bills are paid. With, say, a small crowd of 60 to 80 that can sit as far apart as they wish, but it's intimate enough of a space where even 60 people spread out can laugh together. Mm-hmm. I think that would be nice.
As they say, laughter is always the best medicine, no matter what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, next to medicine, if you're really sick. Well,
that's true. But, you are a doctor. At least you played one on TV.
I did play one. But, if you need an antibiotic, I say get the antibiotic. Don't, rent a Marx Brothers movie. Do both.
That's
take the antibiotic and then watch Night at the Opera.
Absolutely. Well, Patrick, how could somebody, if they are planning some sort of because even a lot of these seminars are still doing virtual things where they're looking for,
virtual things,
looking for MCs or whatever that is. I'm sure you're always game for anyone if somebody's looking to kind of reach out. How could someone find you, get a hold of you, and to do that?
They could go to my archaic website that I haven't touched in, I think, 12 or 15 years. It's once I moved to Iowa, got married, and started having kids, I was like, there's that old thing. And that's under my name. Yeah, patrickalbanese.com. And, at least you can drop me a note and I eventually find it. I think Facebook is probably one of those fast ways to get a hold of me. I think, can't you just send somebody a message on Facebook these days? Isn't it, advanced enough to say, hey, I've been looking for you? But because I think I'm on all of the social networks.
Yeah. Well, fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you can send a friend request, I suppose, right?
Well, or there's the ones that really are not sure how they do that, and they just make the comment on your wall about, hey, how are you doing? Been trying to talk. It's like, maybe you shouldn't have shared that on the wall.
Yeah. I remember once when I worked as the traffic reporter for about a year, and then I would occasionally get the meanest comments.
Right.
And you'd say, why would somebody, evidently, somehow or another, in doing a traffic report, I upset somebody so much that they said, that's it. I can't take it anymore. I got to find this guy and I got to tell him how I feel. And I remember getting one in particular, and this person unloaded on me. You have no business being on TV. What is it with this? Traffic is not a laughing matter. And it was a complete unload. And they dressed me down. I was like, I didn't even know who this is. In fact, I put a joke up the other day and somebody posted right underneath, "That is not funny. I'm unfriending you." And I said, I don't even know who this guy is. Were we friends? I didn't know.
Brings a whole new meaning to road rage. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. You know what I say about, Facebook? Here's the great thing about Facebook. Mm-hmm. It allows you to reconnect with old friends that you haven't spoken to in years, so you can replace the friends that you aren't speaking to now because of Facebook.
Oh my goodness! Yes, find those old friends to talk to again because your new friends don't like you anymore. Patrick Albanese, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. So again, look him up on social media or head over to patrickalbanese.com and run into those radio shows that he has on there that I was listening to the other day.
I should update some of that stuff.
Patrick, thank you very much for your time, man. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
To One-on-One, I am your host, Jimmy Olsen. Thanks for listening.